Imagine being a child in India, first by the ocean in the south, then suddenly in the crowded capital up north, learning to juggle three languages and two very different cultures. That early experience of constant change would become a rehearsal for an even bigger move, leaving everything behind to start over in America. Like so many immigrants, Srividya Venkatesubramanya faced isolation, homesickness, and the challenge of keeping her heritage alive while building a new life. Yet through it all, music and dance became her anchor, and ultimately, the bridge connecting her Indian roots to her American home. Today, we go back to where that journey began. Can you take us back to your early years in India and what role dance and music played in your life?
So I was born in Chennai, which is in the south.
Hmm.
Okay, Chennai is a very huge metropolitan city on the eastern side,
Okay.
with the Bay of Bengal.
Okay.
So I grew up in a port city,
Yeah.
always had the lovely air from the ocean,
Mhm.
wafting into the city like every day. And I used to be a swimmer also. So yeah, just love the water. And I think when I must have been 5, 6, something like that, when we moved to Delhi,
Okay.
New Delhi, which is the capital city of India.
And that's in the north?
In the north and right in the middle, it's completely landlocked, like Arkansas, like other than the river Yamuna that goes through it, not much water there.
Right.
So went there, and that itself was a huge cultural shift for us as a family because,
Yeah.
we very loosely talk about Southern culture, Northern culture and all, but you have to understand that in India, every 10 streets, the culture will change.
Wow.
You could be from the same heritage, like you could perhaps share the same forefathers, like 10 generations back. But what you do today and what someone else, your 10th cousin or 11th cousin does may be totally different. Like it's that level of diversity. You have to live it to understand it. I don't think there's really a way to explain it. So moved to Delhi, and so I grew up. So I was very young, like I said, 5 or 6. So I grew up trilingual. So I grew up speaking English, Hindi, and Tamil, which is my mother tongue. So all three languages were, I would just very easily move from one to the other. Because we spoke a lot of Hindi in school, and we would speak Tamil at home. And my mother was, and she was a teacher of English literature, so she loved it. We used to always say that she was wrongly born, in India. She should have been born in England. So, English was just very commonly spoken at home also.
Mm.
We were encouraged to read a lot of literature, and so that was just part of how we grew up. And music and dance. So I was a total dance nutcase. Anywhere you would see dance, I would be watching like this.
From a young age?
From that very young age. So there used to be, I remember, like, we had this old, those old TVs that were like this big,
Yeah, and they weighed a
the
ton.
box. Yeah. So we had one of those. I think it was, what did we have when we were in Delhi? I can't remember. I think, was it a Solitaire TV? Anyway, so it used to be a black and white TV, and then we bought color much later. But there used to be I think it's still there. It's called Doordarshan. It's a government-run channel, in India. And in those days, I'm talking about the early 80s and all that stuff, there was only that channel. So there's nothing else to see, There was no, all these whatever, nowadays
Netflix.
it's like, I don't know. Yeah. There's nothing like that. So you had to get cable TV if you wanted all those channels. And there was no way my parents were spending money on cable TV.
Yeah.
So the Doordarshan would show music performances, like, of famous Indian dancers or musicians, or, they would give a live telecast of some big festival happening somewhere or something like that, So every time there would be a dance thing, anything, it didn't matter what dance, it just had to be dance.
Right.
And the only kind of dance they would show would be, the classical dances or the folk dances and things like that. I would switch on the TV and I would be dancing in front of it. That's it. And you cannot, I mean, you could have called me like 100 times and I wouldn't have heard you. I just loved dancing so much so that my mom put me in a dance class and I would go. And just like everybody else my age, I would not practice at home. And she used to get very upset. She'd be like, no, you have to practice. If you want to go for dance class, you have to practice. And, I would practice. I would try to practice. But I was just so always excited about dancing. And, yeah, so I was.
So it just always came natural. The
Oh,
desire, the draw, it just
yeah.
was innate.
Always. And I just preferred Indian music always, even though I was growing up with Michael Jackson and Madonna and, I mean, I'm the 80s, like I was born late 70s. So I grew up in the 80s and early 90s. And so it's not as if you couldn't hear other kinds of music in India at that time. But somehow I kept gravitating only to the classical based music, So especially Indian movie songs, which is a huge genre by itself, from the 40s, 50s, 60s up to the 70s, used to be heavily classical based. Whether it was Tamil, whether it was Hindi, any language, it used to be very heavily classical based. So even today, if I want to relax, that's that age.
That's what you listen
That's what
to.
I listen to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you moved from southern India to northern India as a child with that different culture, how did that move shape you and prepare you for changes later in life?
So interestingly, growing up, I never thought about it. Like I never thought that this was a different culture, that is a different culture, that was it, we spoke Tamil at home. We'd speak English at home. We would speak the Hindi out with my friends and all that stuff. And that was it. One never thought of it as something different or that my friends were doing something different. I was doing. It was just life. It was just life. And we just went through it. And I think it was only after I came to the US that, I would start reflecting on my past. And I realized how big a change that had been, and that was the blueprint in a way for me to figure out how I would live in America. Because I'll give you an example. Like we are a Tamil Brahmin family.
Mhm.
So we have our own way of talking and, our own ways of praying and everything.
Yeah.
And both my parents were very, they were religious, but they were not extremely religious. They were liberal religious, if there's a word like that.
Right.
So we would follow, certain things, certain ways of praying and certain rituals and all that stuff. But there were also a lot of rituals that my parents would question and say, this is very outdated, we shouldn't be doing things like this. Like, for example, when we got married, both my grandmothers were widows at that point of time. And typically, widows are not allowed in the wedding. Like, they're not allowed near the couple, know. And my father said, I don't want to swear here, but yeah, he's like, forget it, that's it. And then he told both my grandmothers to come and, there are certain things, that they do. Just like we call it removing the black eye, like if anybody is casting, negative energy, on the newlyweds, then we do certain things. And, he was like, no, he just called and he just did it on the spot. Like he didn't tell them beforehand, because if she had told them beforehand, they would have said, no, we can't, and this and that and everything. He just literally in front of everybody, he called them and he said, here, come and do this. And they didn't have a choice because they had to do it. Otherwise, we couldn't move on to the next thing.
Kind of put them on the spot.
Pretty much. So I'll never forget, because both my grandmas were so emotional. But yeah, since then, in all our weddings, we've done it. Had grandmas and we don't care, if you're a widow or not and things like that. So I think that's why I say, it's kind of a liberal religious or liberal conservative
kind of broke
or
from
whatever.
Tradition a little bit.
You have to, some things were there in those days for a certain reason, and then that doesn't make sense anymore, and so you have to move on from it. So my parents never let us miss that culture. That was our heritage, even though we were living in Delhi. And the culture was not easily accessible. So even though we are talking India, majority Hindus, and everybody goes to a temple, and so on and so forth.
Right.
The South Indian temples can be very different from the North Indian temples. The way they do, the rituals that they do at the temples can be very different. The language in which they conduct the prayers can be very different. So, a lot of differences. But I was amazed, at how my parents had kept it going for us at home, that we never missed it. So whenever we went back to Chennai, and we stayed with grandma and grandpa and all, there was never a hitch. Like, there was no trying to explain to us, oh, no, this is how you do it, or that is how you do it. We just fit in perfectly, because that's how we had been brought up.
So why do you think your parents did that? Why did they?
I think for my parents, identity was a very simple fact of life. This is who I am. This is how I grew up. These are my ancestors. This is how my parents brought me up. Nothing wrong with it. Like, turned out pretty well.
Yeah.
So there's no harm in continuing that way of life.
Mhm.
We are vegetarian. We don't eat meat and, whatever. Like, we just continue those things. And they would always edit out these things, the ones that just didn't make sense anymore,
Yeah.
So we grew up with that beautiful example of when to be liberal, when to be conservative. There's certain things, why should I give up who I am, for what? For what? I mean,
Right.
I don't have to become something else.
Right.
I'm quite good as I am. But yes, there's no perfect. I don't think there's any system or any culture anywhere in the world that's perfect, which hits all the correct,
Right, yeah.
perfect things. There's always something we're missing. And I suppose the purpose of life is to do better, is to know better and do better. So they just brought us up with that attitude, that you be proud of who you are. You are not any different from someone else, someone growing up, let's say in Britain, British, and they speak in a certain way. I don't have to speak with that accent, right? I don't have to. If tomorrow I ended up living in London or somewhere, then I suppose I'm going to end up speaking like that. I don't know, but it's like that. Like my English, even today, if you hear me talking right now, it's very Indian English. I've lived in America for 25 plus years, but I barely have an American accent, yes, I think a few things I've changed, but mostly I still speak the same way, and it's really not. And I still have to explain myself sometimes to my white friends, don't like, what? What did you say? Oh, it just went for a six. Yeah. What do you mean it went for a six? Well, that's something from cricket, we use when we say we just hit beyond all boundaries. So we continue those particular, things.
So I know you were mentioning how diverse India is culturally. And my understanding is the North, there's kind of a divide between the North and the South culturally, and Indian culture kind of falls into those two categories roughly, like classical? Roughly,
very, very roughly. I mean, we can say that for convenience, but even within the North, for example, between Jammu Kashmir and let's say Himachal Pradesh, and these are the states in the Himalayas, in the mountains. And then you have the Punjab, and then you have Haryana, you have Uttar Pradesh, you have all these. Each state is completely different,
Totally
with
different.
different dialects and different food. Like one thing I've always admired in India is it's the same rice, wheat, millets, vegetables, like pretty much, throughout India, you'll kind of get most of the same stuff. Some local vegetables here and there will be a little different. But
just prepared totally different.
Like you wouldn't have even imagined that rice could be made like that.
Yeah.
Or the wheat could have been processed like that.
Yeah.
Totally different. I mean, anyway, but yeah, it's that varied, and you can loosely say, North Indian culture, South Indian culture, West Indian culture, East Indian culture, Central Indian culture. You can keep, generalizing, but they can be very, very, very different.
Welcome to The Good Influencers. I'm your host, Ty Manning. At my business, Restoration One of Northwest Arkansas, we restore properties damaged by water, fire, and mold. Our unique difference, though, and the inspiration for this podcast, lies with our incredible team. Most of our dedicated professionals are on paths of recovery, living out the good influence we highlight here. They bring a culture of trust and resilience to every project, ensuring that your home or business isn't just repaired, but thoughtfully restored. Choosing Restoration One means you're getting expert service from a team driven by purpose and a desire to have a positive influence. If you need compassionate restoration services, find us online at restorationoneofnwa.com or call us 24/7 at 479-866-4257. We're here to restore your property and your peace of mind. So I know when it comes to classical Indian traditions, you have the Carnatic tradition, which originates in the South.
Yes.
And you have the Hindustani, am I saying that right?
Yes.
Tradition, which originates in the North.
Yes.
And you've grown up in both traditions.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
So when it comes to the arts, how have those two different traditions influenced you?
So my mom and dad both used to sing. My mom had learned music, and she had even learned to play the veena, which is a very classical Indian instrument.
It's kind of similar to a guitar, right?
Kind of, yes.
It's got a fretboard and string. Yeah.
Yes, and it has those globes,
Yes.
for the sonority.
Right,
yeah. So she had learned that. My dad had never learned music. He was just a natural musician, like he just could hear and sing. And so there was always music in the house, always. Whether it was music, songs we were singing in prayer, or whether it was the latest Bollywood, movie song, that had become a hit, or these, there are these folk songs that we sing at, for certain events. So whatever it was, we would, there was always music in the house.
Now, was it more classical music or was it kind of contemporary?
Like I said, I suppose it was always based in classical,
Okay.
because like I said, even Bollywood, a lot of the Bollywood music also would be based in classical music.
Okay.
And it was only I want to say, I think a very distinct sound really started developing perhaps in the 80s, 90s or later, where it's almost unrecognizable sometimes, it's like, really? Is that Indian music? But that's much later. When we were growing up, it was not like that. And we were encouraged to, my parents never told us that you can't listen to this music or that music or anything. We would play Michael Jackson in the house. We'd play Madonna in the house.
But you're just more naturally drawn to the classics.
I was just, And my sister learned. So my mom taught me and my sister. Again, my sister would practice. I wouldn't. So my mom was like, no, I'm not teaching you anymore if you don't practice. But she learned Carnatic at home. And then she also started learning Hindustani in Delhi, like from another teacher.
Okay.
And but I was like my dad in that sense that I would also listen and sing. I had a very good ear for music, so I would keep hearing. If you sang, within 2 minutes I would pick it up. And I would also sing. So so music was just there 24 hours. That's it. It was never. I always sang when I would do my work or humming or something. And
so it's kind of simultaneously you were learning both traditions. Then you weren't heavily one or heavily the other. Okay.
So that's not how we were brought up. We were always encouraged to learn new things about people around us and everything. Like our parents never said the identity part was about, yes, this is who we are, but that's how your neighbor is, or that's how your friend is. And if you adopted something that you liked from them, it's not the end of the world. It's good. It's fun. It's more fun because now you get to enjoy with your friend and, with your family. So we were brought up like that. There was no, you cannot read this or you cannot listen to that when we were growing up.
Yeah.
And we had very open discussions at home about what was appropriate, what was not. like Madonna at that time, if I remember correctly, was very scandalous, with a lot
Yeah.
of her lyrics and all that stuff. But my parents never said, no, 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 you can't listen to, that kind of music or something like that.
Yeah.
Some things we understood, some things we didn't even understand. And,
Yeah.
who cared,
It wasn't until later you're singing it and you're like, wait a minute.
Exactly. So I have great respect for her. But yeah.
So you grew up in this very strong family. It sounds like you had strong parents.
Yes.
They encouraged you to read literature, dance, music. So you have this very strong cultural background, and then you immigrate to the United States.
Yes.
And where it's totally different. So what was that like to leave India where everything is so familiar and natural, and to come to a place where everything is just so foreign? What were some of the struggles that you...
For me personally, and for many women like me, there are many women like me who had the same experience. We got married to a guy living in America. So one, we got married, which means we leave our homes and go and start living with our in-laws, like with the husband and his family.
And was this an arranged marriage?
Yes.
It was, okay.
Yeah. Right. So as it is, that is there. And then the second is, I also had to leave my country and come literally halfway across the world. Right. So both, it was a double whammy, So I had to overnight literally give up family, friends, anything and everything that I was familiar with. Everything. Because we moved to Minneapolis. There used to be one Indian grocery store, which was like half an hour away. And my husband would take me like once a month because it was so far away.
Right.
And for many years, that's how I would buy groceries for the family. I'd buy it for a whole month. Mm-hmm. Whereas we've always bought groceries for every week. Yeah. We've never bought groceries for a whole month. So just starting from that, and Minneapolis, so cold, and I've never seen that much snow in my life. Yeah. And never been that cold in my life. So and the food, like if you try to go outside and eat, there were barely, this was when 2001 I got married and came here, and it was barely, I think, one or two. I don't know. I think there was just at that time they were coming up with one or two Indian restaurants in the area. I don't even know now how Minneapolis is, but that time there was barely anything. And the only thing you could eat outside was pizza and burgers, and we are vegetarians. So the only thing you get is a veggie pizza. I remember Papa Murphy's used to be like, oh my gosh, we would keep, because their Veggie Delight pizza was the only thing that would be loaded with vegetables. Mm. And we wanted, because if you ask for a vegetable pizza, you'll get like 2 or 3 vegetables on top,
Yeah, a couple olives, a couple.
Exactly, and we were like, okay, that's not, we are used to eating a lot of vegetables. So right. Papa Murphy's used to be our favorite takeout. You'd go get it and then bake it at home. And right. Yeah. And so, yeah, those. But that's all, and then, at that time in America, even in 2001, it was not common to have a vegetarian option on the menu wherever you went. So you had to pick and choose where you could go. And I couldn't really eat out and the only thing you could eat out was fries and, milkshakes and ice cream and things like that. And
unhealthy stuff.
So, yeah, so it was hard. And I think after 25 years, things have improved. I think access to Indian restaurants, Indian food, Indian clothes, Indian whatever has improved. We'll see now with all the tariffs. I don't know how things are going to go for the next few years. But yeah, definitely, like if you go to Dallas now, or it's so easy to find. And you can literally, in California, in Texas, I want to say even in Atlanta, perhaps, if you don't find a certain grocery item in one store, you could actually go and get it in another one.
Oh, nice.
Like that many options nowadays. Right.
So I guess those first couple years, new family, new traditions, new culture.
I would cry every day.
So what emotions, and how long did that last?
So after that initial, 2 weeks of excitement of being married and, being in America and all that stuff, that lasted barely 2 weeks, I think. And then my husband started going to work and I was alone. And I didn't know what to do, and I had not started driving at that time. I used to drive, but I didn't have my license to drive in the US. And so I would take the bus or I would walk out, I'd go to the library and things like that. But every day when my husband would come back from work, I would be crying. He got so fed up, he was like, okay, I can't do anything about this, like I can't take you back. I can't move back because I just got this job. I need to, work here for at least a couple of years. And so he got so fed up. He's like, why don't you do something? And I couldn't work because I was on a dependent visa at that time. He was on an H1, I was on an H4, and we were not planning to have kids immediately. So then he finally said, the only thing you can do is study. And I already had 2 master's degrees at that point of time, So he was like, why don't you study? I was like, what should I study? I've already studied everything I can study. Then I said, okay, fine. And I enrolled in a PhD at the University of Minnesota in curriculum and instruction. My whole background is in teaching of languages, so foreign languages. And so I started that, and that helped because it put me back. So my background is in teaching Spanish as a foreign language. So it put me in the classroom with first year students in the university, And I think getting back into the classroom to teach, which is what I love doing, I think that really helped me find some kind of purpose, because I don't think even my PhD classes were that motivating. But I think, getting back into the classroom with students and teaching and sharing my story and learning about students, and their stories. And I think those were my first introduction to American culture. I learned a lot about. In India, universities are generally, on the periphery of a city. Like they'll be farther out, they'll very rarely be in the city center, very rarely. Whereas here, there are universities that are right.
Yeah, the city's almost built around it sometimes.
Right. And I used to think, oh, how silly. Like, why would you put this, because that's where the traffic is the worst and, everything. Why would they do that? And so it took me a while to learn, that, oh, no, but land grant, they were given land, so that they could build. And the city center, the way I think about city center in India is very different from the way you think about downtown life here in the US. And so I started learning more and more about American culture, I think, through that experience. I think I'm still in touch with some of my peers, with whom I taught. They're some of my very good friends even today. And, they help me understand, certain things about, what was okay to say or not. And because in India, we don't believe in leaving our children with a nanny. We just don't. It's not that we can't afford it or something. It's just culturally, like, I would hear it from my grandmas. Both my grandmas would be on the phone. Why are you leaving the child? My mom, my mother-in-law, everybody will be like, what are you doing? What is so important that you have to leave the child behind and go, kind of a thing. So we'd always try to juggle the child between my husband and me. And so it was trying to find that middle ground, something that supported my cultural heritage and also allowed me to breathe a little easily here, given the system here. I think that took a while. It took a long time. It did. It was not an overnight change or anything.
Yeah. So can you give us kind of a sense of how long that process took? I'd imagine, we're talking years.
It took many years because, so we moved here to Arkansas when my children were very young. So my daughter was 4, my son was 6 months old when we moved here from Minneapolis. And so it's been, 17 years, something like that, since we've been here. Yeah. And perhaps if I had not had kids, it might have been different, perhaps. But because we did have children, immediately that responsibility was on our shoulders to continue passing the heritage on to them. And these kids were first generation Indian Americans, born and brought up here. So they really didn't understand Indian culture the way I understood it. So it was very challenging to teach them about their heritage. And what obviously they caught on to very quickly and easily was the American culture, which they learned from school,
Right.
especially from friends and neighbors and things like that. And I'll never forget this Halloween. It always comes very close to one of our very big celebrations. It's called Navaratri. And it'll come very close to either Navaratri or Diwali. It's kind of, the three kind of follow each other, And I would be getting ready for Navratri, and that's a big thing. We put these steps and we arrange dolls, telling different stories of gods and, things like that. And there's puja I have to do every day, in the morning. I have to make a special dish and blah, blah, blah. And then evening, people will come. I have to give them some certain things. And then in the middle of all this, I'm going shopping for hay bales and pumpkins. And I've never carved a pumpkin in my life. I don't know how to carve a pumpkin. And what do we do? And luckily, we had friends, who showed us how to. But it's not easy, to. Yeah. I mean, if you've grown up, watching your parents, cut out perfect triangles, in a pumpkin, perhaps, you have a better idea. I've never seen anybody cut a pumpkin. But we did it, we did it. And then immediately, get ready for Diwali. So we make a lot of sweets, like sweets and savories for Diwali. Like Diwali is one big food fest. Oh my gosh. Just eat and eat and eat all day long, kind of a thing. And then, so I would be that 1 or 2 months, I would be slammed with totally different things. And then in the middle of all this, phone, calling your parents back home, calling your in-laws, calling everybody to, say, to wish them and to be wished. And it's morning, if it's morning here, it's night over there. If it's night here, it's morning over there. And, trying to catch them, in that 2 hours or, before somebody falls asleep. It is constant. Like now when I think about, oh my gosh, did I do all those things? It's very, very hectic. And young children, growing up and, their own school stuff. And, my daughter had to be in like half a dozen classes. She had to learn dance. She had to learn gymnastics. She had to go swimming. She had to... And my son also, I tried, but he wasn't, he was happy just being home. So between the two of them driving around, I used to drive like close to some 80 to 100 miles a day.
Running kids around and
everything, like just morning to night, I was driving somewhere between 70 to 100 miles a day on average.
So staying busy like that, did that help you to not think about or not give you time to be homesick?
Oh no, it's opposite. It actually creates so much stress because you feel guilty, I used to feel guilty. I used to feel bad that I was not able to do the prayers the way I was supposed to do them, or or just how tired I would be at the end of the day. And we light the lamp again in the evening, and I would be just exhausted, at the end of the day. And I have asthma, so I'm really exhausted at the end of the day. And it's very hard. It's very stressful because you feel as if you're giving up on your heritage. You're giving up on what your parents taught you, and
Yeah.
And that's when I started thinking about how my parents handled it. But then they lived in Delhi. They were still in India. So even though it was harder to access a lot of the materials and a lot of the things that one needed, it was still available. Whereas here, even that was a problem. Like trying to find the groceries, and so expensive. Like the groceries are so expensive because there's just not enough. I mean, we are in the Midwest, so the volume, of sales is not much. So everything is more expensive than, say, California or, Texas or something like that. And so that was, my sister lives in California. So, she and we would talk and we would, offer support to each other. And I think that helped a lot, emotionally. But it's very hard to have one foot here and one foot there. And our generation, that first generation that immigrates, we always go through that, because you have to give up something, and it often ends up being something about your heritage, about your culture.
And that hurts a little bit.
Oh, a lot. It hurts a lot. And the children also don't understand, they don't understand why that is so important. you know.
So you moved from India to Minneapolis. You created this life in Indianapolis or
Yeah.
in Minneapolis, and then you moved to Arkansas, and you're kind of starting all over again. And I imagine you maybe had a little bit of a support system there in Minneapolis, and then you lose that all again.
Very true, because in Minneapolis, we had a couple of very nice neighbors. And my mom, she was, I have to say this, like whenever she came, my mom, she would immediately make like 10 friends. So she was a teacher of the Art of Living Foundation.
Yeah.
So she would conduct these classes and everything. And then she'd immediately connect me with 10 people. And so that was very helpful when she used to come. And my mother in law, she also was a great support, to kind of she's more a homebody, my mother-in-law, but like she would teach me how to cook certain things, because I never cooked Indian food when I was young at home. I would cook like pasta or pizza or something like that.
Right.
So I didn't have too much experience cooking Indian stuff.
Right.
So she would teach me how to do certain things and how to do things in the house, because I was like, just put everything there, or something. And she's very organized and things like that. So they would come once in a while, and I would benefit from it. When we moved here to to Arkansas, we didn't know anybody. It was the first time we moved to a place where we didn't know a soul. Even in Minneapolis, I had some third cousin, and Arun had some friend, from school who was living there, and something we had 2-3 people we knew already, when we came there. But Arkansas was like a total. I didn't even know there was a state called Arkansas.
Yeah.
For a lot of Indians, I think it's New York, and then it's California, and then that's it, and perhaps Texas. And
Well, I mean,
you're
if it
done.
makes you feel any better, there's I think Americans that don't know.
Don't-
Arkansas.
That's true. So, and Bentonville, I didn't know. I mean, like when the first trip we made here, they call it a discovery trip or something. When you want to, they bring the family
Right,
to
yeah.
see if they would want to move here and things like that. And I remember bringing the 2 little kids and looking at everything. And Cheryl Carmen, she was our agent, and she drove us around and everything. And we are still friends. And I was like, we were driving from the airport to Bentonville, and we were coming through all that farmland.
Yeah.
And the first time in my life, I'm seeing all these cows, and I was telling Arun, I said, "Are you sure this is where you want to move?" I'm a fully bred city girl, like fully. Like I've never lived in the village or anything like that, small town or anything. So I was like, "Are you sure? Like this is where we are going to be moving?" And then we came to Bentonville. It was literally 4 streets, and that was it. That was the city, and it was so quiet. There's not a soul on the streets. Like even in Minneapolis, one would see people outside. Here, barely anybody. So I was
And this was like what, 2000?
2008.
Okay.
This was 2008. So
Right.
not
Yeah.
not that long ago. But that's how it was. But then, it was a good job for my husband, and and we had decided that we would always go wherever his job took us.
Yeah.
So my job would always be something that we could, transport to other cities. So we decided to move, and I was very, very hesitant those first few months, those first few years, because I really could not find. There was there was a small temple, near the airport. Like you had to take this road that was not even paved, and it was like a, what do you call it? Like a barn. It was actually a barn.
And that was the temple.
That had, somebody, had given the space, for us to use as a temple and all that stuff. So this was somewhere in Highfill, like that you had to go to. So there was a very nice Indian community, but a very different Indian community than I was used to, because I have a very cosmopolitan background. I've lived in Spain for a whole year. I speak many languages, foreign languages amongst them. And so I've just grown up like that, So, and here a lot of people who are here have come directly from India, like, from a smaller town or from a city or something like that. So it was a little hard in the beginning to find friends, to find people, who had similar backgrounds. something common that we could, work on, and somebody who was liberal religious, So it was a little challenging even within the Indian community initially. But I think within a year of me coming here, we started. I got involved in the community, and I started, like, a few of us we met. I organized small fancy dress for little kids, for pre-K kids at one of the events. I think it was the January event, the Pongal function that happens here in Northwest Arkansas, and so through that I had met some people, and we were talking, and then they were like, we should start a Tamil class. Like, we should teach Tamil to our children. And then I was like, I can't teach Tamil because
And
my
this is
Tamil.
a dance type?
This is our language.
Oh, it's okay, language.
This is our language, Tamil. And I said, I'm not qualified to teach Tamil because I have done Tamil only from up to 5th grade. I've not done Tamil beyond that. So I'm not fit to teach, but I have a background in curriculum and instruction, and I can help create the curriculum and get the materials devised, because at that time, we still didn't have that many resources for teaching Tamil in the US. Now it's a totally different story. But at that time, we didn't. So we got a group together, and, I helped create the original, all the practice sheets, and
Right.
how it should be, and how big it should be, how small it should be, blah, blah. And then I trained the teachers, a little bit on, because they had no idea about how to teach, So I gave them a little training on how you had to have a lesson plan and how you had to think through what you were going to teach. You couldn't just show up and say, oh, today let's do this. That's
Right.
not how it works, kind of. So that we started that, and then Tamil class, and then we started something called Sargam, which was just an annual event showcasing Indian traditional music and dance. So we started, me and my friend Nandini, we both started that. I started my Kumon Center in 2010. So between 2008 and 2010, all this happened. We started all these things.
Okay.
Because it was needed, and that's what, you want to keep your heritage, you don't want to just give it away.
Yeah.
Because I personally, yes, there is only so much one person can do, but as a community, we can do a lot more.
Right.
So thank God for the Tamil classes.
Yeah.
Both my children are literate in Tamil. My son, not as much, but my daughter, yes, she's literate in Tamil, and she can read and write and all that stuff. And they speak some broken Tamil at home, but they know it, and it's because of that class. Now I believe that class, we started with some 10, 20 kids. Today, I believe the Tamil class in Northwest Arkansas teaches over 100 students, and they have different levels and so on. So really, the community has grown so much from then. So
I know you've also founded the Ravi Cultural Foundation, which celebrates Indian classical music and dance. So from the time that you arrived here in Arkansas to the time that you started the Ravi Cultural Foundation, how did that all come to be? It sounded like you were already starting to get engaged in keeping the culture alive and teaching children. So how did Ravi come to be?
So what happened was, the group of friends that I first met, all the children were kind of the same age. They were all 5, 6, getting into preschool, getting into kindergarten, it was all that age group. And that's typically the age when those who are interested in putting their children in classical music or dance training, you typically start around that time, age 5 or 6. And luckily there was a gentleman here who was teaching Carnatic violin. There was a lady who was teaching Bharatanatyam, and so on. There were 1 or 2 people, in the community who were teaching these things. So these kids would go for classes. And then I noticed that whenever we had the big celebrations, the big community celebrations, whether for Pongal or for Diwali or whatever, the kids used to learn separately. They would learn some Bollywood, like a Bollywood dance number or, something like that. And they would come and do it. And that was like it didn't make sense to me and some of my friends. We were like, hey, you're learning Carnatic music. How come you're not performing Carnatic music, or if you're learning Bharatanatyam, why are you not performing Bharatanatyam? Why are you doing some random Bollywood stuff? I mean, do it, but where is the Bharatanatyam and,
Right.
where is the talent showcase in the community event, right? So there was this perception, in the community that wouldn't work, it would be very boring for people to watch or, something like that, which didn't make any sense to me either because even the Bollywood numbers, other than the music, yeah, I don't think people were really like, wow, what a great performance of 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds. They all look cute, whether it is, traditional music or, Bollywood music. How does it
Right.
matter? So there was that, we were trying to, again, we are trying to keep our heritage and we are trying to keep it all together. And I wanted my children to specifically only learn Indian music and dance initially because the traditions are very different, you know. And they could have learned Western music at any time, Really, once you've learned Indian music, it's easier to learn Western music. The other way is very hard. If you initially learned Western music, it's harder to learn Indian music.
And why is that?
Because the styles are so different. It's just so different.
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of, hoping that even in little Bentonville, I would be able to, do that. And like I said, it was possible. And that's when my friend and I started Sargam, which was an annual event. We were just trying to find a platform for people who were interested in this. We would have like 80 people show up, 650 to 80 people show up for those events. And I was like, wow, and we did that for about 7 years. I think 7 or 8 years we did that. And then life happened. Life has a way of happening. I suddenly lost both my parents within 6 months of each other. And it was just out of the blue. There was no, indication before. They were not sick or anything like that. And so that really brought me to I had a moment, I had an epiphany, like, okay, what's going on, right? Like, what am I doing here? And life can't just be about getting up, eating, going to work, coming back, eating, going to sleep. It cannot be just that. There has to be something more to it. So I thought of first starting another business because I really enjoyed being a business owner. I didn't know anything about being a business owner when I started my Kumon Center. But I had learned, already. It had been, I think, about 6-7 years since I had started it at that time. And so I thought I would open another business. I just couldn't find a business that, like, I enjoy my Kumon business because it's all about teaching and helping children and education and all that. I just couldn't bring myself to sell makeup or, I don't know. I don't wear makeup and, I can't tell another person, oh, you should wear makeup. So I just couldn't see myself, doing something like that. And then I thought about Sargam because we had stopped it for a year and I was dealing with all these things. And then I kind of thought about it and I said, okay, if I do this, it has to be done as a nonprofit. It cannot be done for profit because we don't have enough people, in the system here. So I decided to do it as a nonprofit. No idea what a nonprofit is or anything.
Mm-hmm.
Just went online, found out, started, the temple is a nonprofit, the Indian temple here.
Right.
So we asked them, the people who had started it, like what's the basic process and things like that. And that's it. I just applied to the IRS and everything. I got my letter, everything. And then I was like, oh, now what do we do? Then we just started, with programming and I put my board together and I'm so grateful to all the people, who first started, who were board members, Smita and Lalita and Satish. And of course, my husband. I mean, I think by default, my husband is in the board.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I'm missing a couple more names, but they were all so gracious, to join, even though we didn't have a roadmap as such at that point of time. But I knew what I was doing. I just didn't have it all written down and ready to go, So, and my daughter was learning at that point of time. She was learning from this very great Carnatic violinist called Srividya Venkatesubramanya. So I had approached him, to do a master concert for us. And because nobody had even heard about Bentonville. Like, I mean, I remember Vittal sir telling me, he said, Bentonville, where is that? And I'm like, sir, it's like one small place here. And, west is to come from Dallas. You just drive up from Dallas. And
you're like, don't worry, the Americans don't even know what it is either. Don't feel bad.
So he came, a quartet. There were 4 musicians and they came and they stayed at our house. And everything. And oh my gosh, that made such a difference. That made a whole huge world of difference to our organization, because then the word kind of got out, and Sir, he's like a big pillar of support for our organization, because he kind of spread the word, saying, you should go and perform in Bentonville. These girls, they're so passionate. They're doing such a great job. You guys should go.
So that was kind of like a turning point.
Absolutely. A big turning point, a big risk, to take and everything. But I think we put Bentonville on the Carnatic circuit.
So was he from India? Did he live in India?
Yeah, he lives in India.
So you guys sent him here from India?
So he travels to regularly, not just America, but, Europe, Australia, whatever. Wherever people invite him for a concert, he goes. And so he was anyway coming to the US, for something. And I asked him for the certain dates, and he was very happy, to oblige us with a date and everything. We didn't know how much to pay them. We didn't know where the money would come from. Nothing, And that time, that first concert, we organized at the Record in downtown Bentonville. I had called the Crystal Bridges Museum, and they quoted me some big amount for the Great Hall, because I actually wanted it at the Great Hall at that time.
Right.
And I said, I don't have that kind of money. And, the conversation didn't proceed because they didn't know who I was. I didn't know who they were, all that. And I looked at some other hotels and all that stuff. It was same, it was very expensive. And when I went to this Record, there was this lady, and she was so kind. She said, oh, you're a non-profit. I'll give you a discount. And, it'll cost so much. And I'll have the chairs and everything that you need and everything. So don't worry. And then she said, she asked me, she said, like, just as you have been asking me about what I do and all, she asked me, and I said, yeah, this is what I'm trying to do. I just set this up. This is 2018. Okay, it's the first year of Ravi, and said, yeah, I'm very passionate. I want to bring Indian culture is so diverse, and, it's not just about Bollywood. There's a lot more about it. And I want to make sure my community has the opportunity to learn about its own culture. Whether others also learn, that's secondary for me, but I want my own children, my own community to learn about its heritage. And she said, oh, you should go and meet this friend of mine and all. I said, okay, fine. And, she gave me a name, Joe Randall. And she said, go talk to Joe Randall. I didn't know who Joe Randall was. And, I just messaged him. He texted me back. We met at one coffee shop. This thin guy with spectacles, he comes and he's asking me questions about, oh, what is this? What are you doing? And all these things. And then I told him everything and all. And then at the end, he said, I work for the Walton Family Foundation. And, I think this is something we would love to support.
Oh, wow.
I didn't know what the Walton Family Foundation was.
You're like, great.
So I'm like, oh, okay, thank you.
Really.
Okay, whatever. So I come home, and my husband in the evening is like, what did you do today? Oh, I met this guy called Joe Randall, and it seems he's something from the Walton Family Foundation. My husband was like, what? I said, wait, what happened? He said, do you have any idea what this is?
Yeah.
Then the rest, as they say, is history. Even today, when I think about that moment, I get goosebumps, because it was just totally out of cosmos, because my intention that we should not lose touch with our identity, with our heritage, was just, I think, so strong that I just attracted it. So we've been so blessed that the foundation has supported us since 2019 till present day.
Wow.
We're very, very grateful, because there's still a long way to go, because so I found out Indian arts, I don't think there's any endowment in the US that supports Indian arts throughout, entirely. I don't think so. I don't think we have an endowment. There are a lot of organizations, and they do a lot of work, but I don't think it has been organized to that level yet. Or perhaps it has just recently started, perhaps. But historically, we don't have that. It's always been a group of people would get together, put in the money, spend it on an event, and things like that. So through Ravi, one of my vision goals was to educate Indians about running a nonprofit in the US and how you do it and what are the rules, and, how do you train to be a fundraiser, or how do you do marketing, for a nonprofit, and how do you, because a lot of Indians, if you tell them oh, it's a nonprofit, they're like, oh, that means everything is free. Well, no, that's not how it works. It's free in India because about 100, 200, 300 years ago, somebody, or 500 years ago, somebody established that institution and set up an endowment which continues to run that institution.
wow.
And therefore, today, for you, it is free because of all that. And you take it for granted because you never thought about the history. Here, we are just now beginning to, see all that.
So in 300 years, it'll be free here.
Hopefully, because the way Americans, like in the West, the way they think about nonprofit work and the way we think about nonprofit work in India, they're very different.
Totally
a lot of differences. So I don't know. Perhaps I don't know. We can perhaps rub off each other.
So I heard you do a podcast interview with your daughter.
Oh yeah.
And your daughter, she had mentioned that learning Indian dance is a huge time commitment. It's not, you can't just casually do it. Talking about 20 hours a week, just learning dance. So what has your commitment to Ravi required from a time and energy standpoint?
So I was running my Kumon Center at that time. I think Matangi was in middle school about that time. And Anirudh was still in elementary. And we had realized that Anirudh had some hearing problems and things like that. So we would make these trips to Little Rock, to the Arkansas Children's Hospital, because at that time we didn't have the Northwest Arkansas Children's. And in the middle of all this, I started Ravi, and I was working, I think, I calculated at some point of time, I think I was working some 80, 90 hours a week between everything. It was just crazy. It was literally like I would wake up in the morning at 5:30, and then I would just go between all these things. And then I'd come home in the night, finish dinner, everything, and then sit and do some Ravi work, like, get all that done, because it was just me at that time. It's like there was nobody else.
Yeah.
The board would, help out here and there, with certain things. And Satish, he was when I approached Satish, I told him, I said, you have to take care of all the money part of it, because I'm terrible at it. So he would keep working and figuring out, all the different rules about taking money and this and that and all. And I would do all the programming and the reaching out to the community and everything I would do. Mm-hmm. The social media, everything was me, So yeah, that first year I think was like absolutely crazy. Like it was, but I think it was worth it. I mean, I think today we now have like some 5 or 6 staff.
Oh, wow. So they handle a lot of that for you.
Literally from all around the world. I have one person in Philippines. I have one person in India. I have one person on the West Coast. And then I have a couple of people here. And we all work seamlessly, Everyone is part-time, no one's getting paid any big bucks. But we pay, I insist on paying. And these are the things I wanted to establish through my organization to say, because it's, we always take our culture for granted. Mm-hmm. What's the big deal? It's my culture. So why are you charging me? Well, to make this accessible to you, it's costing me here. I don't have the resources. I'm putting everything together. And somebody has to do this job behind the scenes for you to come and experience it for half an hour.
Right. Yeah. Everything's not free.
So, and it's not fair to expect Indians to always work for free for their own culture.
Right.
Like Indian artists are always the first ones. Oh, will you come and do a dance? Will you pay me? No, we just want you to dance for 5 minutes. So there's a local dancer here called Megha Rao. And she used to she was my daughter's dance teacher. And she would tell me, she'd say, Vidya, every time I approach these people, they ask me to do for free. And I said, after one point of time, I said, how many times does she have to perform for free before somebody is convinced and says, yes, she's a professional, I should pay her? Like, where does it end? Because for every organization, it's the first time. And they're like, oh, will you give us a 5 minute? I'm like, do you even realize, Megha, that you have to spend 1.5 hours to get ready for that 5-minute performance? It's not like she just wears, some shoes and one skirt and comes and dances, It's like a full 1 to 1.5 hours of getting ready. Makeup, jewelry, clothes, the costume, the dance costume and everything from top to toe.
So that's been important to you to properly compensate these artists.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. Like that was one of the, so all this, from what I learned from Megha, what I learned from my children, about the challenges, like they were so shy to share their culture with their classmates. It was like literally my daughter was leading a double life. There would be a life at home and there would be a life at school, and the two wouldn't mingle. And that was tough. That was tough. I remember kindergarten. She went to kindergarten. She came back one day and she said, "Mom, don't give me any lunch anymore. I'm not going to take lunch to." And I would pack Indian food, for lunch. And I was like, "Why? What happened? Like, what's going on?" And this was barely within a week of 2 weeks of school. No, everybody keeps saying it smells and it's smelly and this and that and all. So I said, I thought about it. Then I sat her down. I said, okay, what were your friends eating? Like, what was everybody else? She was the only Indian in the class. What were your friends eating? Oh, they were all having chicken and this and that and all. I said, isn't that smelly to you? Yeah, it is smelly to me. So that's it. This is smelly to you and that is smelly to them. That's it, finished, over. You don't have, why do you have to think about it so much? And my daughter looked at me, she said, yeah, that's true. This is smelly, that is smelly, everything is smelly. So starting from there, I had to find a way to help my children cross these waters, and help them help their friends, to understand what it was. And so Rave came from all of that. So the foundation, like the Cultural Foundation is named after my parents, because it struck me that, again, when you become a parent, the responsibility is greater to transmit the heritage, to transmit the culture. So I named it for my parents because so many parents give so much of their time and effort and everything, commitment to helping their children learn about their ancestors and their culture and heritage. And that's what Ravi ultimately was like, okay, how can we make it easier for the families to experience these things without them putting in that much time and effort? How can I get these artists supported so that they get paid for all the years that they have dedicated to their art form? And, and they were professionals back home, but here nobody understands, their dance or something. And all the support that goes with that, like we had to recreate Bharatanatyam in certain formats to fit the audiences here. Because if she were to come and perform the traditional way in which she would have performed in India, people here would be like, what is that? So we had to kind of pick and choose and curate the dance experience so that people could understand, and find something to grab onto.
Now, is that Indian and American alike that you're having to curate for, or were you?
Oh, yes.
Really? Okay.
Oh, yes. Because a lot of Indians, they'll send their daughters or sons to dance class or music class. They have no idea what their children are learning. They're just doing it because they want to keep the tradition going. Like, it's a way for them to keep in touch with their roots.
Yeah.
So they'll just send them to these classes, but they have no idea what the music is about or the dance is about, and they don't participate. Like as parents, they don't participate in the experience. For them, it's literally drop off, pick up. Right. And so we a lot of the programs that we create that we run at Rave is very particularly designed, for Indian community, for non-Indian community, and there are always elements that will help everybody learn a little more and feel a little more comfortable coming. I used to have people, like non-Indian people, would call me and say, so let me share, this is really funny. Okay, so Indian people, I would say, hey, we have a master concert, this great national level singer or musician or dancer is coming, and tickets are $20. Will there be food? I'm like, no, it's just for the dance. Food we'll have to buy separately, like if you want. And we are not planning to offer food, And that was like a huge thing for the Indian community when I first started. $20? It's too expensive for one ticket. because they were used to these community events, which were like $50 for the whole family and food was included and, all that stuff. And I was like, so yeah, that was, so I shocked everybody in the Indian community with that. And then the non-Indian community would be like, is it okay for me to attend? The first time somebody asked me that, I didn't understand the question. I really thought I didn't understand what they were saying, because I said it's a public event. We've announced it. Like, it's publicly announced. There's a website. There's a link for you to go and buy a ticket. Like any event, you want to go watch a movie, you can go buy a ticket. Nobody asks, can I go and watch this movie? So I don't know what to say, when you ask me, can I go and watch this event? Because we've said very clearly it's open to the public. It says on our posters, open to the public, $20 ticket, $10, whatever, So that was how it was in 2018 and 2019. And, and today, imagine we announce our master concert and within the first month, we've sold like 20 tickets. Wow. And all sorts of people have bought it. It's not just Indian community or the Indian community. Actually, we still have to push them to buy. Buy now. Don't buy, the last day.
Yeah, but I actually really want to take my kids to a concert. I think that would be.
Yes, you should come for our summer master concert. The September master concert. September, gosh, I'm going to get the date wrong. 18th or 19th, the Friday.
Okay. And where is that going to be at?
It's at the Record.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, downtown. Yeah, it's the 19th.
Okay.
Friday, 19th September.
Okay.
And it's a very interesting Hindustani concert.
Okay.
Hindustani flute and tabla.
Nice.
With this guy called Jeff Bannister, who's a very famous jazz saxophonist.
Oh, wow.
It is going to be brilliant. And then we also have our fundraising dinner right after that. So I hope it gets sold out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, I'll look into that. Because, I mean, for one, I personally love live music. And then cultural music is better, but then sharing it with my kids, I think, is really important too. So I look forward to that.
So we also did, talking about sharing cultural music, we have something called a house concert, which is basically we do one every quarter, where we bring a local artist, someone in the area, and they present about their art form. We have one, I think this month also in August, we have one where Vidya is going to, her name is also Vidya, the artist. Nice. Yeah, she's going to present Carnatic music and talk about, different aspects of Carnatic music and things like that. So we did one where Vidya worked with, what are they called? There's this husband-wife team. They live in Fayetteville and they are music. They do Ozark music.
Okay.
I'm so sorry, but I just cannot remember their name. So they brought Ozark music. Vidya sang Tamil music, folk music. And they matched the topics. Like, they sang about nature, rivers, birds, animals, like that kind of. It was brilliant. It was just so brilliant. And they even did a piece together, like, joining it all.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was just amazing. Like everybody who came that day was like, what is this? So
you're saying that was a house concert?
Yeah, those are house concerts. We used to have it at our homes. But then after the pandemic, we moved it out, because we didn't want to, nobody was comfortable keeping it at home anymore. So we kind of moved it out. But we still call it a house concert.
So what has Ravi done for your relationship with your kids, with your Indian community, and then with your American community?
I think personally, Ravi has helped me I don't feel guilty anymore, like how I was saying, it used to be like this crazy trying to do everything. And I don't feel guilty anymore because my daughter once, she told me, she said, Mom, because something she had to do a presentation for senior year. I said, why don't you do it about Indian music and, Western and all? And then she just looked at me, she said, Mom, I'm going to do it about Taylor Swift or something, I was like, but sweetie, and then she said, Mom, I can't, constantly represent Indian culture all the time. There are other things also that I like. And that was a great moment for me, to learn that, yes, I cannot be an Indian person all the time because I'm also an American. I also live here, and I also am a mom and I'm also a teacher. And, I do have other identities, so I cannot just keep, being so militant about this all the time. So I think the more we did Ravi, I think I learned to find my balance, to find peace with what I was doing, especially with my children at home. And I think with the Indian community, one of the things I keep hearing from people who attend our events from the Indian community is I feel so proud of our music, of our artists, of our.
And then I guess, how does that make you feel?
I was like, good, thank you. So it takes me back to what my parents or any parent, like I've had there are so many women, especially, like I told you, right? They come here, they get married, come here. Many of them have learned music or dance. And I have drawn them out, to come and perform at Ravi events and things like that. So many of their parents have personally come and told me, thank you so much for giving this opportunity to my daughter. Because she had stopped dancing after marriage and after coming here to the US. She didn't think she could continue. Thank you so much for giving that opportunity. She's learned for almost 15 years. She has learned this art form. So that makes me feel good. That really makes me feel good that I was able to, not that I do it personally. When I say I don't mean that I just me did it. It's a whole team at Ravi Cultural Foundation, our board members, our staff, the volunteers. It takes
that positive feedback,
it takes a big village, to get this out every year consistently without giving up and making it happen. And so that really, that's a job well done. I I go to bed, with a smile on my face. I'm happy. And the non-Indian community, I think that's the biggest love that I have received is when they have come to our events and said, oh, I never knew that this was like that. Or they've come, we do a lot of craft things also, just to get people's hands on Indian styled arts and things. Oh, really? I didn't know, the hill folk.
Textile.
Yeah. So, Beatrice, she's also, we've done a couple of events together at her location. And I was once wearing the sari and I showed her, I said, see, this is shibori. This is full. The sari is, tie and dye because she does a lot of tie and dye also. So I was showing, I said, the sari is full tie and dye shibori with embroidery from the west of India, from Gujarat. There's a very special stitch called the Kutch embroidery. Wow. It's called Kutch embroidery. That the run of Kutch is a small region, which is like a bend into the land, and so the sea is right there, and it's a very different area. And and she was like, wow, I've never seen this combination, of embroidery on shibori like this and everything. And to see that anybody can relate with each other. Because when she showed me tie and dye for the first, one of the first times, I said, my aunt used to do this at home. She's like, really? I said, yeah, my aunt, she used to do a lot of tie and dye, and the whole family, my dad he would only buy handloom saris, and he was the one who bought the saris, not my mom. It was my dad.
Really?
Yeah, he had a great knowledge of weavers, of weaves, of different kinds of weaves. And
so I guess explain real quick the sari. That's a traditional dress that you would see.
So in India, we don't have a history of stitched clothes.
Okay.
That came with the Europeans.
Okay.
We didn't have a history of that at all. So it was all just one piece of cloth.
Gotcha.
And there were different sizes of a piece of cloth. So men had a different size, women had a different size.
Right.
Married women had a different size, younger girls had a different size. Okay. It was like very different. So it was all draping. So the dhoti is a drape. There are many ways in which you can drape it.
Right.
The sari is a drape. It's typically it is about 5.5 meters long, typically the sari that you wear nowadays. But there are also, there's more traditional one that I wear on certain days, which is 9 yards.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so 6 yards or 9 yards, and you tie it in certain ways. So from different parts of India, you'll tie it in different ways.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's not the same. Though now there's a modern way, where standard way, where everybody wears it, with a certain amount of pleats and whether you pleat it in the front, whether you put it in the back.
Oh, wow. There's a lot to it.
It changes. Oh, there's a lot to it. There's a lot to it. And they're all draped.
Right.
So maximum nowadays, I think a lot of these girls, they're not confident and they pin everything. But when I first learned to wear a sari, there was only one pin I would put here on the top so that it wouldn't fall off, when I was working or something. But never worn a pin on my sari. No. So otherwise spoils the fabric.
So let's suppose for a minute that you moved back to India, that you picked up with your family and you moved back. So how would you feel not having your American community anymore?
Oh my gosh, that's going to be tough. Actually, it won't be tough because I already know where the American diaspora is in India. I know where they live. So I'll continue to get my cookies and my, the Halloween candy and everything. I'll continue to get all that because I know where they live. I think if I went back to, see, the beauty of India is you name it and it is there in India. You want to talk Americans living in India? I'll show you where they live. You want to talk about, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but there is a big, but now I suppose shrinking community of people from Iran, from Persia, who moved to India a few hundred years ago. And they are called Parsi. We call them the Parsi community. They were given land by an Indian king because they leave their dead on a high place. It is a walled place. I'm not very good. I'm not sure about the exact facts, but they have a walled area and it's supposed to be very high. It's not supposed to be on a low ground. It's supposed to be very high and they leave their dead there. There's a fire that keeps burning and then, and they have their own, rituals and rites and everything. And so he gave them land, to freely live the way they used to live. So the Parsi community, very big part of Indian community. Like my grandma's best friend was a Parsi lady. I wore a Parsi sari for my wedding.
Oh, wow.
So it's like, I mean, we wear like 5-6 saris for the wedding, different things. So one of the saris was a Parsi sari, which I still have. And so it's like that, you name it. And that part of the world is represented in India. I'm very confident. I'm sure there's even an Eskimo here and there. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I really wouldn't be surprised. There's no, out of 1.4 billion people, I don't think there's somebody that's not there.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I've got 2 questions to end on.
Okay.
It's what's one piece of advice you'd offer to someone immigrating here to the U.S. from any culture?
It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to adopt, the new cultures, wherever you've moved, their culture or their language and everything, all that is fine. But don't lose sight of where you came from. Because I once met a Mexican guy and I asked him, I said, this was at the Diwali studio that we had, art studio at Crystal Bridges. And this guy, young man, was being in his 20s, he came and he said, oh, this is so beautiful and everything. And I said, yeah, I'm sure you also have, where are you from? And, I'm sure you also have some tradition like this back home. And he said, no, I'm from Mexico. I don't have any such tradition. I said, no, that's not true. But what he was trying to say was, he had come from a very violent past. So he felt that was his heritage, And I said, sweetie, that's just your generation. That's just one generation above you. 10 generations ago, you were not that. You were somebody else. And what I'm showing here, the stories I'm showing here about India are also, it's not as if India doesn't have strife, as if we don't fight, in India. We do everything. But it's okay. It's okay, to go back and, and know your identity, about who your ancestors were. I am my grandmother's granddaughter. I cannot just say that she's nobody to me anymore or she didn't know what she was doing. No, she did the best that she could, and her mother before her and so on. So where can I deny my past or my roots, like where I come from? So I think immigration is just a beautiful way for making more friends. And of course, it works both ways. It has to work both ways. It cannot be just me coming and adopting American culture or something. It has to be the other way. Or you also have to be equally curious about who I am, and try my food, and things like
and
that.
that's my second question is what bit of advice would you have for somebody welcoming immigrants?
Yeah, we're just human beings, all of us. We all have red blood. It's all red. You poke anybody, that blood is going to flow and it is going to be red. It is not of any different color or anything. So we're all just human beings. We all eat, we all celebrate, we all mourn, we fight, we love. We all do that. And life is about having freedom to do that. Nothing else, and we put restrictions on a lot of things only because we fear something, is going to happen, something that shouldn't happen or that shouldn't happen or something. So it just comes from fear, it doesn't come from love. Because from a place of love, I think, your food is stinky, my food is stinky. It's okay. I'm going to try a little bit of yours. Perhaps I won't like it, and it's okay. The goal is not that you have to eat my food and I have to eat your food. That's not the goal. The goal is, oh, you brought that for lunch today. Yeah. I got this for lunch today. I'm going to have some of yours. And like how we were in school, right? I mean, I'm sure like even you, when you grew up in school, that's what you did. You shared each other's lunches. Yeah. There was always the one kid that would eat everybody's lunch, I mean, that's it. That's it. Why should we lose that as adults? I mean, it's the same thing. Just bring your plate to the, your meal to the table, and we'll eat together, and that's it. I think that curiosity, I think, is very important and should be a healthy curiosity. That's what I feel. A lot of people ask me certain things, and I'm like, you know what? You can just Google that. You don't even have to ask me. Like, you can just Google that. Why do you wear this? Just go Google. Yeah. Why do they wear bindis? Yeah, and then come and ask me. If there's a particular follow-up question, or or why do you wear this particular bindi? I saw that, about bindis being like this or something like that. That's a question to ask me. To come and ask me, and ask every other, Indian out here who wears a bindi, why do you wear a bindi? Google.
ChatGPT.
Oh my gosh. ChatGPT now even tells you like the whole history. Yeah, really. And, this is how it started. The first person to wear a bindi was this person. And oh my gosh, that's crazy. Yeah.
All right. Well, Srividya Venkatesubramanya.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ty. Thank you so much for having me.
Wonderful.
Same here.
Thanks for listening. We hope you were inspired by the story of today's good influencer. If so, please consider sharing it. Also, if you know someone doing good in our community whose story needs to be heard, send them my way. You can email me at thegoodinfluencerspodcast@gmail.com.